Great. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. My name is Alyssa Ayres, and I'm Dean of the Elliott School of International Affairs. And I'm so pleased to be able to introduce tonight a wonderful discussion on commercial engagement in Africa, the David Miller Lecture. Tonight, as we will hear from this evening's featured speaker, there is much broader recognition of how commercial engagement with Africa advances both U.S. and African interests. Our students are interested too. And this year, in response to persistent student interest and advocacy, we launched a new course, Africa and the Global Economy, that examines Africa's trade and investment environment and the big areas of opportunity that lie ahead. Now, this memorial lecture is named for GW alumnus David H. Miller, who dedicated his career to U.S. engagement in Africa as the founder of the Corporate Council on Africa and then later Africa Global, both of which focused on commercial engagement with Africa. Following his death in 2004, David's family, friends, and fellow alumni established the David H. Miller Endowment for African Studies at the Elliott School in furtherance of his vision of U.S.-Africa engagement. We are delighted to welcome several of David's family and friends for tonight's event, Kyung Cho Miller and Max Miller and Audrey Miller, as well as friends and alumni Mark Brown, Rich Mead. Is Tim Medina here? He's on his Tim Medina's on his way, and who have all supported the endowment from the very beginning. So thanks so much to all of you for joining us tonight. I also wanted to take just a moment to recognize the recent passing of David's mother, Rose Marie Miller. Our best wishes are with the Miller family, and in a sense, we are celebrating her and her legacy this evening. So let me just call upon Mark Brown to offer a few words in her memory.
Thank you very much, everybody. My name is Mark Brown. I'm an alumnus and fraternity brother of GW and a fraternity brother of David Miller, and one of his best friends, just like everybody else who knew him. It is takes a load off. David passed in 2004, Super Bowl Sunday, from a battle with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. David was an advocate and would have transformed the African continent. We'd be way more ahead with where we were, where we would be if David was alive. So we take that into context. It's not a joke. And, thank you for the Elliott School for continuing our messaging for David's memory and his support of the school. We look forward to 20 more years of increasing the endowment in David's name and perpetuating his memory. What I'm going to do is offer you Rich Mead, also our fraternity brother and fellow board member of the David H. Miller Memorial Foundation, to speak about David's mom and give you some context here on the foundation. As a side note, David's original job here with Charlie Black and Black Manafort Stone and Kelly firm, Rich is the chairman of, and it's a kind of a continuation how David got into Africa. But while we're here in the Elliott School, we do want to remember that this is about promoting the continent of Africa. If you knew David to come here and to come into Washington, D.C., and he could have gone to any country, any big, fancy, famous country, any famous firm. But his goal in life was to perpetuate a people, to help a people that were probably the greatest potential we have on earth, but we're sitting in the background. So that's the most important message that I could give for David. And I look forward to letting Rich talk about his mom.
Thank you, Mark. And Young wrote today, honoring Rose Marie Miller, that Rose had an unwavering commitment to her family, church, and country. And those words could not be more true. Please allow me to share just some memories of Rose with you. When we were first starting the endowment at GW, I think there's a little bit of confusion on behalf of Rose and her husband, Bill. And my wife and I own a second home in Michigan, on Lake Michigan. So I offered to drive over to Rose and Bill's house in Farmington Hills, explain to them what we're actually trying to do here at GW to honor David. And at the time, my wife and I just had our oldest daughter, who was a toddler at the time, and now she's finishing her sophomore year at University of Michigan. And at the time, our daughter had tracheostomy, so we couldn't leave her out of our sight. So we went to go meet with Rose and Bill, and they had brought a ton of toys from their grandkids to try and amuse our daughter. And in fact, like the first 15 or 20 minutes of our meeting, Rose was just playing with our daughter to try and get her engaged and trying to satisfy her and please her, which was so great. And as we were walking through what we were trying to do here at the Elliott School to honor David and his life and his work in Africa, I remember both the profound sadness and the profound joy that Rose had as I talked about what we were doing to honor her son. And she was so hurt by his loss, but so joyed by what we were trying to do. And she was so anxious to try to do anything she could to help support this endowment and promote this endowment. And after we made that visit to see Rose and Bill in the summer, every Christmas, Rose would write out a handwritten Christmas card to my wife and I and our family. And I think she appreciated seeing, our Christmas card to her with our growing family. We now have 4 kids. And everyone should know that Rose channeled her energy around the loss of David into writing a book about David and his life and experiences. And unfortunately, our friend Tim Medina, who was going to bring the book here so we could share Rose's work with you, he's not yet here, but he'll be here and he'll bring the book with him, and you can see her great work. And when Rose was still in good health, she went to every single event here at the Elliott School in David's name and honor. And I remember, seeing Rose and her children and the family, and now with David's grown children, it's such an honor and joy every year to see them. It's just so touching to my heart to see her and her great profound love of her son. So such an honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark and Rich, for those words. Before we proceed and before I introduce our keynote speaker for the evening, I would also like to thank our co-sponsors who have helped disseminate word of this wonderful talk to their audiences: the Elliott School's Institute for African Studies, several student groups as well, the Delta Phi Epsilon Professional Foreign Service Fraternity, the Onero Institute, and the Young Black Professionals in International Affairs organization. We appreciate your collaboration and the strong student turnout tonight. And now, I am very pleased to welcome our guest speakers. In February 2022, the Honorable Reta Jo Lewis was confirmed as EXIM's President and Chair of the Board of Directors, and she was sworn in by Vice President Kamala Harris. Chair Lewis is a senior executive with over 25 years of leadership experience in international affairs, legal, public policy, business and regulatory affairs, and subnational diplomacy. She was most recently a senior fellow and director of congressional affairs at the German Marshall Fund of the United States. Prior to her time at GMF, she served as the first ever special representative for global intergovernmental affairs under Secretary Hillary Clinton at the U.S. Department of State during the Obama-Biden administration. We worked together during this period, and I can personally attest to her dynamism as an international affairs leader. You should ask her about subnational diplomacy. She is uniquely positioned with the cross-sector expertise in diplomacy and commercial engagement for this role at Exim Bank. Ms. Lewis was the first Black woman to serve as Vice President and Counselor to the President at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. She is a life member of the Council on Foreign Relations and former member of the board of the Leadership Council for Women in National Security. She will deliver some opening remarks, and then following her remarks, Chair Lewis will join Jennifer Cooke for discussion and questions from the audience. Ms. Cooke is director of the Elliott School's Institute for African Studies, which serves as a hub within the university to create opportunities for students, scholars, policymakers, and practitioners to learn, research, and share knowledge related to Africa with the university, with African institutions, and the policymaking community. She teaches courses on U.S. policy toward Africa and transnational security threats in Africa. Ms. Cooke joined GW in August 2018 after serving for 18 years as director of the Africa program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, where she led research and analysis on political, economic, and security dynamics in Africa. So I now welcome Ex-Im Chair Lewis to the podium to give brief opening remarks before turning the discussion over to you both. Chair Lewis, over to you.
Well, first of all, thank you all so much for giving me a few minutes to join you this evening for this great, again, celebration. I understand that having in-person events, these are continuation of the first. So really glad to be here and really send my same regards to David's mom, who I see has us all choked up about her support for her son. And so glad that we're able to celebrate that this evening with her. I look around the room and I see some friends and I see some folks that I have worked with previously, meaning your dean. Your dean and I worked together in the Obama administration with Secretary Clinton in the Department of State. So had worked with the previous dean, Brigady, who is now in South Africa. So these subjects that we're going to be talking about this evening is like so near and dear to us. And so looking forward to making a couple of comments. They told me maybe about 10 minutes or so, hopefully not that long, but and then to have some questions, because I think is being more interactive is really important. You know, to be able to be here also with David's wife, Mrs. Miller, we are continue to be honored and proud and privileged to be in your presence and the support that you have given not only to David, but to all of the people here at GW. And not only that, but with your young family members here, the son and the daughter. Really glad to be able to see you all, to be able to talk about some memories and to celebrate the contribution that David made, especially to the continent of Africa. And so as the chair and president of the Export-Import Bank, for those of you who do not know, I always like to tell people, let me show a little raise up your hand of how many people have heard of the Export-Import Bank or ever used the Export-Import Bank. See, now I like this crowd. See, we might not have to work so hard. We just have to bring you up to date. But the bottom line is being in Washington, I can tell you that you are a part of a group of people in an audience where there were more hands that went up that know about Ex-Im Bank than those that don't. But it is incumbent upon us as the stewards at Ex-Im Bank to be out here ensuring that you know the work that we're doing, especially the work that we're doing here in this topic today around commercial engagement with Africa. You know, Export-Import Bank, just a little primer, we're charged with ensuring we meet our mandate to support American jobs through facilitating the export of US goods and services. And in 1983, Ex-Im was fortunate that the Congress asked us to expand on our goods and service financing that we would make available across the continent of Africa. So the charter in '83 was also amended to include a specific mandate to support US exports to sub-Saharan Africa in response to the growing importance of sub-Saharan Africa as a market for US products. So today, when I am able to, along with my other colleagues who are here in the room, who are here to lay celebration on an individual like David, we are glad to be here because it's good for us to understand where the vision came from that so many of us are now carrying out. We know how he spent his entire professional life committed to establishing organizations and so much interest to help African people, but also more importantly, to help the diaspora even here in the United States. And then of course, to bring the public and the private sector together to the table to recognize the promise of opportunities across the continent. So many of you have already spoke about the fact of how David established Africa Global. One of the things about bringing, I think that's we at XM along in the US government try to do all the time, how are we bringing not just the right people, but those who are interested, those who may not even know they have an interest to the table so that we can continue to cultivate the relationships and to make positive change across the African continent. But one of the things that as I was doing my own homework about David, knowing how he had placed so much hard work in places like Mozambique and Central Africa Republic, around Guinea and the Kingdom of Swaziland and so many other places. But we know his work doesn't start or stop there. We know that he is the founder, one of the visionaries for some of you who are in this room, who helped him start and continue to advance the Court Council on Africa, one of our nation's important organizations that helps to promote business and investment between the United States and Africa. And I'm really actually glad to talk about CCA for also a minute of David's legacy, because everywhere I've been around the continent, CCA has been a part of work with our different private sector members, our chams and others. And in fact, to this date, your current, the current president or chair, Flory Lisner, is on our CCA member of our sub-Saharan Africa advisory group. So anytime I have actually either been on the continent or here, even in the United States, CCA has been somewhere at the table with that private sector. So we're really glad to know that David's vision of an organization that's as vibrant as CCA still lives on. I will let you know that I've been in this job for 1 year and a couple of months. And my first international visitor, my first global leader that I met with was the Prime Minister of Cote d'Ivoire. And last year we were advanced 1 year later, and was really glad when I did my first trip as the head of Exim Bank, not my first trip in the US government to Africa, but in this position, Cote d'Ivoire was one of my first stops. So we, I think, came full circle. Now, why was that also on the agenda? It was on the agenda because we were signing an MOU with the Prime Minister. And as I said to the Prime Minister, I'm not about just signing MOUs. I'm not just about talking about what we're going to do in Africa. I think we have to demonstrate what we're going to do in Africa, and being able to, kind of unusual for prime ministers and minister of finance, you would think they do come to Exim Bank. They had not. But I think that the Prime Minister literally set me on the course of understanding not only the importance of Africa, but what African countries are prepared to do and are doing right in their own backyard as they seek support from friendly countries and allies around the world. One of the things is that at XM, we have an unwavering support of the continent of Africa. I think it doesn't come just because it is in our congressional mandate. It actually comes because of the administration of which we are serving. And there is no better, I believe, administration at this juncture in this era, as in President Biden and Vice President Harris, who has made a strong commitment to continue to follow through on what all of us in the US government can do, not just one agency or one department. We all realize it's not going to be one agency, one department, one company, one country. It's going to have to take all of us working together. And the reason why it's going to have to take such an important, this important work is going to need so many of us, is that there is always, and why we're here today is about celebrating the work of the private sector also, because it's going to have to be public and private. So my first trip to Africa last year was not only to Cote d'Ivoire, but it was also, we made a stop in Rwanda. And then we also made a stop at the COP27, which was also in Egypt. And that came after numerous visits and meetings with so many ministers and and leaders from the continent who came to talk up to XM about the financings that would be available for them at XM. Now, you all know we are the agency that can provide direct loans. We provide working capital support for our exporters. We provide insurance and guarantee products. And so it is always good for us to be in any venue to be talking about how we can help not just the companies that you hear about, but to be the bank for everyone. And being the bank for everyone, we mean large, medium, and small. And what most people really don't understand about XM is that last year, 88.8, I think it was, % of our transaction was in the small business area. We did over $1.6 billion last year in small business alone. Of the 900 employees, the 400 employees that we have, 90 of them plus are committed to small business. And in that commitment, that's where you will find us continuing to drill down in underserved communities, communities with women, minorities, rural communities, LGBTQ, tribal, you name it, veterans. That is the department that is doing that work, and we're very proud of it, because when XM was reauthorized in 2019, and some of you around here helped us with that, and we really appreciate that. Congress asked us to do 4 things. And one of those things, of course, as I mentioned, was sub-Saharan, provide more financing in sub-Saharan Africa, provide 30% of our financing in the small business area, and then also to provide more financing in what we call our transformational export areas, especially with those who are in strategic competition with China, that we know all of us are, around issues around semiconductors and AI and quantum computing, water, sanitation, critical minerals, and the like. And then finally, to create more financing available on the renewable side, all things energy storage, energy efficiency. All of those areas that I just named are areas that when African leaders, or leaders even in general, come and talk to us, they are emphasizing those areas. So it's not that we're not prioritizing the entire spectrum, but those are the ones that Congress asked us to do. And then the administration has asked us under the president's what we call PGII, we're all in the government here, types here. We understand we've got an acronym for everything. So it's the Partnership for Global Investment Infrastructure, which is President Biden's signature initiative. And in those pillars, it is around renewables, it is around infrastructure, it is around gender, and it's also around on the health side. Those I consider to be areas that are also very complementary to the work that African leaders come in and talk to us about. But, for this is an audience who is very familiar with the question, why Africa and why now? And so just to highlight some of the things that is constantly being said to me that I would just mention here in this audience, it's not about just the diverse culture and the fact that it is one of the rapidly growing population. It really, and not about just the vast resources. We know that the continent presents an unparalleled opportunity for economic development. And so we know the continent is undergoing a transformative shift. And with a rising middle class, increasing urbanization, and a growing appetite for innovation and entrepreneurship. And so I've seen that and witnessed it firsthand, and I have heard it time and time again, not only in my travels last year, but also in the work that we're doing this year. So it's not just about why Africa, we also say, why should they look at an XM bank? Why should the diaspora community come to work with us? Why should leaders come to talk to us? It really is about the business of XM's mission to empower American business to compete globally. And we are committed to then helping them succeed in African markets. I would tell you that in my recent visits in country and talking to leaders from all continents, Africa constantly comes up. And in coming up, they want to understand where XM Bank is. And I'm sure it has a lot to do about the, standing behind our transactions with the full faith and credit of the United States of America. And so we want to be able to be there to partner with all businesses of all sizes, from small and medium to large corporations, so that we too in America, not only our exporters, but also those foreign buyers and those sovereigns who want to buy America's goods and services. A lot of times people forget the services part. But I tell you, so being here at the university, services matter a great deal because a lot of them are looking for training, a lot of training ways to train the population. They're looking for development of their workforces. They're looking development of their educational institutions. So, there may be an opportunity that we ought to be talking about here so that we can continue to create what we call win-win partnerships. And not just win for America, but win-win for those on the continent. When we talk about creating jobs, we're not talking about just creating jobs in America. We need to be talking also, as we have, about jobs on the continent. And so many of you know, as President Biden said at the African Union Summit in February 2021, he made the commitment about how America is stepping in and leaning into providing services of not just aid, but also trade, and also commercial engagement. And so that's where institutions like Exim Bank comes in wholeheartedly. So we want to, and have played a long role on the continent. Exim this year is 89 years old. We celebrate being 90 next year. But Exim has been serving and doing transactions on the continent since 1942. And that work was an infrastructure project in Angola, and we are still working in Angola to this day. So we've been there in the 50s in the Congo, we've been there in the 60s in Ghana, we've been there in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s across the board in the Kenyas and the Egypt, Morocco, Togo, and Ethiopia. In the last 20 years, we have supported more than $20 billion with transformational projects across the board, everywhere from South Africa, Senegal, to Gabon, to Nigeria, Rwanda, Cameroon, and so many others. Now, that's a nice figure, but it's not nearly enough. And we know we have to do more, and that's why we are continuing to step up the presence of the work that we did. Now, this year, I've already been back to the continent. I was fortunate and privileged and honored to be asked by Vice President Ayres to attend and travel with them to, I was able to travel to Zambia. And in that visit, she also had gone to Ghana, and she also had gone to Tanzania. Just last week during the World Bank, we announced another, we believe, landmark MOU with the government of Tanzania. And we are looking to do more work in that area, as we have pledged to do with what we were talking about with the Vice President. When she made her announcements while she was there, we are so grateful how XM led the way in the articles around being one of the key components of providing commercial opportunities for those in Tanzania. I had also stopped not only in Zambia, but my first stop this year was also in Kenya. And we were very excited to be there with the AmCham Kenya from the chamber, where we also were continuing to support what the Vice President was doing about new investments in Africa. And being in Kenya gave us an additional opportunity to talk to so many private sector participants. One of the things that XM is very clear, and I think the administration is clear, of the role that the private sector is going to have to play in driving investments in Africa. And then before I come to my seat, I also want to just emphasize the fact that most recently, we've been in numerous conversations around digital connectivity. We know that it's going to be one of the key areas of focus for all things Africa on the continent, as well as infrastructure development. We know that countries are still lagging behind and are severely limited in their ability to connect with their customers and suppliers. So we are really very much engaged in that conversation on the continent, and not just that conversation, but also financing opportunities. And then finally, let me talk about the advancement of women and talk about and the work that we believe the diaspora members can play so important. One of the things, there's not been one country, not just on the continent, but I would say throughout, that has not, when they talk to us about programs that we might have that they can emulate around advancing women, and also about the connectivity that they would like to have in working with members of the diaspora. We know that women are going to be critical to Africa's economic growth. And I would tell you that it is so nice to meet so many leaders from the continent. But when I meet ministers of finance and they happen to be a woman, we always smile at each other and commit to even doing even more. And so there's been some that I just recently met in Angola and some other countries that we're really excited because, she or the ambassador is not just focused on women, it's their goal to focus across the lay of the land. But it is important when we not only talk with those women who are ministers of finance, but when we talk to the ministers, the prime ministers and others who are focusing on women and seeing how important women are going to play, especially around SMEs. They truly understand. I think it doesn't matter what continent on it, whether I'm in the Caribbean, whether I'm in Latin America, whether I'm in Europe, everyone is talking about advancement of women. Everyone is also talking about how drawing your diaspora communities closer together is going to be important. We know that there is such a bright future for the work that we have to do. We know that we are going to have to step it up. We're going to have to power up women. We're going to have to power up the work that we all are doing in the United States government if we're going to be a major player, continue to be a major player on the continent. So really excited to be here with all of you and look forward to a few questions from Dr. Cooke. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chair Lewis. And let me just say what a treat it is to be here at the David Miller Memorial Lecture. It's such a pleasure to see David's friends and family. And it just, I got choked up as well. I mean, to see the devotion of his friends to him, to his mother, to the work that he did in Africa. I never met David, although I'd heard of him because of the Corporate Council and Africa Global. And I feel like I'm getting to know him through his friends and the love they have for him. So thank you so much. I also just wanted to say a welcome to Vivian Lowry-Derrick, who is our new she's just joined the Elliott School's board and has kindly provided an endowment for an annual lecture series focused on U.S. policy towards Africa, focused more on the governance and democracy side. So I think it's kind of a wonderful complement with this series, which is focused kind of on the commercial. Yeah, thank you. Very fortunate all around. So I did want to say, I just wanted to kind of touch on a lot of it. Just to keep in mind how important Africa will be strategically in the next 25 years. By 2050, and it's really not that far away, I need to say, it used to be, but it's really around the corner, a population of some 2.5 billion people. Combined consumer and business spending of about $16 trillion. The urbanization you mentioned. Urbanization is often that turning point when service concentration, intellectual concentration kind of really starts to drive economic transformation. And Africa is rapidly urbanized, just compared to 10, 15 years ago. So you've got the US is interested, other players in the world are interested. This is not about competing with other players necessarily. We need to be there because we need to be there. Competing with others is a good goal along the way. But Africa holds enormous promise, important in terms of finding allies and partners to tackle, and this is something that the Biden administration has said so often, tackle some of the global challenges. Africa is going to be critical. Climate change, if it's pandemic disease, if it's proliferation, if it's women's empowerment. And one of the keys to building kind of enduring ties of mutual benefit and interdependence is through trade. Africa is a trading continent from time immemorial, and the key to Africa's future is going to be trade. There was a hiatus there after 2015 where the Exim Bank did not get reauthorized. And it was a time when people are got to compete with China, we got to compete with China. And it was just, what the heck? This is just the moment that you need the Exim Bank, especially for a context like sub-Saharan Africa, where perceptions of risk are often much higher than actual risk, where there are opportunities, but a private sector here has not always been that well informed on those opportunities. Again, that's one of the reasons that David Miller was so kind of ahead of his time, because he was out there looking for those opportunities, believing those opportunities were there. But much of the private sector needs that nudge, needs that hand holding, and that assistance to kind of get over the hump there. So I don't want to speak or ask too many questions of you because we've got a great, very informed audience here. I guess one thing I would like to ask is this quickly, how is Exim different from a regular bank? Why do you step in, I mean, versus the private bank? I mean, there's the concept of additionality.
Yes.
So maybe you can just briefly talk on that.
She asked me, those institutions that we work with are commercial banks, so we don't have you're not gonna walk down the street and see the Exim Bank.
I'd like to make that wrong.
And want a little withdrawal. Exim Bank is a debt financer at the end of the day. And so with the work that we do, we are America's only official export credit agency. There are over about 110 of those around the world. China has 3. And we always say in the work that we're trying to do, we're not playing race to the bottom. We're not gonna, it's all about quality, value, and service. I can tell you, I tell people all the time, I do America's business all day, every day in terms of as it relates to businesses and our exporters. We are there to stand in the gap and be additional to when the additional to transaction is actually written in our mandate. We have to be additional in our financing. We cannot compete. We're not there to compete with the private sector. And in places like Africa, you're absolutely right. It's the risk factor that always comes up whenever conversation starts talking about Africa. I don't care who is in that conversation, especially on the American side. But it's not just even on the American side. You can look at all countries that I engage with on the East side. They begin a lot of that conversation, like you said, real or perceived. And we like to say that at XM, we have our economist team and others that are there to help push back on all of those misnomers. XM has one other mandate that we also have to meet that's written in our charter, that we have to have a reasonable assurance of repayment, meaning we're America, we want to get our money back. I mean, I can't say it any simpler. And as someone said, to be no one wants to owe the United States government. So in the work that we do in an export credit agency, it is really about facilitating exports. So if a U.S. business, small, medium, or large, wants to export abroad, they look at the types of tools that we have at XM, ranging everything from our loans to our guarantees and our insurance and other types of products that we have. And so with those 2 mandates, it all begins, I always say, with it can begin with conversation, but it really doesn't begin until we have an application. And so we do spend a lot of time advising and counseling and working with SBA and Commerce and a whole host of other agencies as we try to discuss with exporters and potential exporters the work and what's available for them. She's absolutely right. In 2015, XM went through about 4 years of where it did not enjoy the level of support that it has right now. We have, I believe, significant bipartisan support now. A lot of it does come from the work, I think, of the offerings that Congress asked us to do around making more financing available in those areas that I had just mentioned. One being, of course, China. But in 2015, XM could not do loans over or 25 billion because we did not have a board. XM at that time did not have a board quorum. We now have a fully functioning board. We have a quorum. It's 4 members. It's a board of 5. We have 4 members, 3 in the majority and 1 in the minority. And we are there working each and every day. That after the 4 year when XM could not, do those large loans, and then it became even over 10 million. Then 2019, when it was reauthorized, and many of you helped us win that battle for reauthorization, then COVID hit. And so we always say, it was cold at XM. And so now I'm proud to say winter was coming, but now winter is here and winter is now over. XM is fully back. We're fully functioning, and we are looking at deals all over the world. And we're also looking to do deals with as many co-financing partners as we possibly can. Africa is just one of the places that also has our attention. So we really appreciate those who helped us in the lean years and now in this phase of this era of XM to be able to have strong bipartisan support. All of us who were confirmed had good, I think great bipartisan support. XM is reauthorized through 2026. During that time when we were authorized, we were given but we were authorized to the tune of about 135 billion. We have spent north of 35 billion. We have about 100+ billion left to authorize, and say we're always out here looking to talk with those of you who, if you don't know that much about XM, or even if you know about XM and you haven't used it in a while, just as they say, please come tell. Yes, give us.
Great. I'm wondering if you can give us, particularly I'm interested in the small business area. Can you give us some examples of recent projects? I mean, I know you're at the very top, but maybe are there kind of some standout projects?
Oh, you need to know everything. You can't just be at the top. No. No, ain't that kind of part.
Okay.
The bottom line is to be in an institution that has about 400 employees, 90 of them, that's a quarter of our institution that is focused on small business. We have a senior vice president who is over that area, of which she is also over what we call our 13 regions around the United States. We don't have global offices. We consider the work that we do each and every day with our embassy teams is the ones that is out there evangelizing, I call it, on behalf of not just US government, but on behalf of a financial institution like XM. So it doesn't matter which country I go in or which country we're dealing with on a regular basis. We make sure we are all operating as one government. And in so doing, we work very closely with the Department of State and so many others, Commerce, USTDR, and USTDA, and DFC, all these initiatives that at least I know this audience knows what I'm talking about. Because we can't do the work alone. And that's why we are constantly going into meeting forays in New York. I've made 2 big trips to New York where we have talked to the bankers there, something that, as they tell me, no XM banker has done in terms of the foray we made to not those that we're just dealing with, but others that we would like to deal with. We went to London most recently and introduced a new product, a insurance product with Aon Corporation. We hope they're not exclusive. We hope to, we were there and we met with a whole host of reinsurance brokers who want to help us in the projects that we're going to be doing. We see that as also significant, especially in the riskier markets or the markets that might be deemed risky. We had a great foray, not only in the banks on the New York side, but also the business that we have done regionally around the US to some of our larger regional bankers. So we're constantly on the effort to deal with our bankers, our lenders, and then while we're out there, always making sure we're talking to our exporters, large, medium, and small.
So do the exporters don't come to you, or they come to you, or you have to find them? And I wonder, like, are there some concrete deals that we make?
Well, there are a lot of concrete deals.
Yeah, I mean, like, just an example of that.
She wants I always like to say that at XM Bank, we can't pick winners and losers. XM.gov, right there on our website, really lays out the examples that we like to highlight from people who are using exporters who are using our insurance products, who are using our guarantee products, and who are asking and working forward for working capital and direct loans. So we have everything. I'm not on my way to Denver. We're going to be meeting with some Denver exporters. I was just in Miami, where we were working with folks down in Miami. Some of the best exporters, U.S. exporters we have are definitely in that region. I was just in Pittsburgh, whereby we were meeting with the steel workers, but the most important thing is not about the steel workers. It was also about the employees and the workers there, as we were advancing a $200 million facility. Why was that important? Because it was all in support of small business. And in that support, it is about making sure they get paid and paid more on a timely basis. And so that was also something that came to us. I think one of the things, what Director Cooke is saying is that, XM used to be, what walks in the door is what we're doing. And what I keep trying to tell people, once you've been shut down at a little winter time there, a little vacay, you can't be just sit back and wait for it to walk the door. You got to go out and get it. And so we can do everything from the $5,000 insurance product to someone who is trying to sell their services abroad, or for that foreign buyer, if they have a reasonable insurance payment, if they want to purchase and make sure they too get paid goods and services here in the United States. So last year at our conference, I would definitely urge you, there was a panel called, it was about women in exporting. And we had a number of our exporters on that panel, one in particular, Ms. Sharma, who is a textile business, who found out about XM at an economic development meeting in the state in Philly. And she went from a $1 million business when she started using an XM product and went to a $3 million business. And then during COVID, she switched their entire strategy around and made COVID products. And she now moved to from a 5, she's now at about a 5. She went from a 5 million to a $7 million business. We're really glad to highlight those on our website and people like that who are very public about the support that XM has given them, because it's those stories. It is the XM one-on-one stories that they hear directly from someone who got something as small as $5,000 product, or someone who got $1 million product, or somebody who got a $20 million or $1 billion product. But the small businesses are the ones that people want to hear about, and that's where we have that 30% goal that we have to meet every year. And so that's why we have to be in audiences, rooms like this, talking about XM. We can't be the XM of old, of thinking it's just going to walk in the door. We have to be about the business of going out and asking the people in this room to help be ambassadors for us about the tools that we have in order to help an American business or a foreign buyer who wants to buy American grow, but not only to grow and expand. We want them to compete, but the most important thing is we want them to use the tools that we have, maybe in concert with other tools in the US government to not only compete, but also win.
Excellent, thank you. Great example. I'm wondering, you were the special representative for intergovernmental affairs, so looking at kind of subnational engagements with municipal or state. I mean, I think of a country like Nigeria, some of the states are larger than the country. And so I wonder kind of, is that kind of, or are most of your partners in Africa, national governments, or they, because it seems like there's an opportunity, and that it's not only just trade, it also builds kind of diplomatic ties as well.
Well, we definitely are on we are totally focused on the commercial side, but we really definitely, of course, work with the diplomatic side, and that's why our work comes in with the economic side of the house and the administration and the national security side of the house. I think complements each other and work together. We work with both, of course, developing those, getting those sovereign guarantees is something that we spend a lot of time on working with sovereigns, because and those ministers of finance who prioritize projects that anyone in country or not in country wants to participate in. We work very closely with the individual business owner. I actually, right before this session, did a greeting to the World Trade Center Association that was meeting in Ghana today. We had just met with the World Trade Center in Delaware. And they took a delegation of American businesses there. So glad to know that we participate across the board. Time is of the essence, and we have to have a sense of urgency, because if we don't, others are there. And as they are there, they're using all their tools commercially, diplomatically, or in order to gain to beat the competition. And so one of the things when she talks about Nigeria, I actually have traveled. I traveled to Nigeria when I was at the State Department several times when we were, and she was so right. Those governments are huge. Those state and local governments are huge. But just as those governments, whether they're in Nigeria or Brazil or you name it, people don't even understand how to work with US states and localities when they come from abroad. They think we're all just one United States. They keep forgetting that there are 50 states. And so when I was there working with the secretary, we were constantly explaining in the area of engagement that we were in, that it really is state by state. It's state by state, it's city by city, it's county by county. Those leaders there are the economic drivers of their individual communities. And so it was important to have someone like the secretary, who had been married to a governor, who had been a United States senator, who truly understood that there was an era that we needed to be in. And so I'm really excited to see Secretary Blinken and our ambassador Nina and the deputy special rep Danny, both of them leading this engagement in Denver. In a few short days, we're all leaving. I'm going to have a massive show of support, I think, for the U.S. government in Denver, Colorado, with the city summit. And in this city summit, we're glad to see in the Biden administration, who had been a former state leader, who was a prosecutor, and got Vice President Ayres, who was a prosecutor and an AG. People who understand in our cabinet that the importance of municipal government, the importance that there is a role and a place and a space for mayors and governors and local leaders, and to have our U.S. government help them to understand what that looks like, because they're the architects of their own economic engine, not us. We can't. I always used to say I can only ask the U.S. leaders very nicely, will he come go? But they are. I'm very delighted in this job that in the engagements that we have prioritized, it is because of some of my past work of prioritizing state and local leaders, how engaged that these leaders have been, whether they've been the Governors Association, the Mayor's Association, the legislators, the counties, you name it, and to see Secretary Blinken and the special rep and the deputy special rep focus on this work that's gonna come this week. It's gonna be a massive undertaking. It's gonna, I think they have like 1,000 participants, 200 mayors. We're all gonna be out there doing what we can to showcase the work that we're doing at XM. Because we know they all need financing in some kind of way. And we think that that function will continue to do not only providing commercial engagement for those around the financing that we have, but also the continued, I think the cornerstone of that work is about how to assist in strengthening and deepening our overall US bilateral relationships country by country.
Great. Let's turn to the future ambassadors of the Exim Bank for some questions, comments. Let's go to Vivian first.
I'm gonna bring the microphone to everyone. We're recording, so we want to make sure we get your audio. Great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Vivian Lowry Derrick, and I'm just delighted to be here. I want to first underscore how important David Miller was to African business development. And listening to you, Chair Lewis, he would be very, very happy with the approach that you're taking. My question is kind of really very, very specific. I am an evangelist for solar in Africa because I believe that well, I can go into all of the numbers that I keep right, but I'm thinking about a place like Mauritania, which can benefit from some support and help on the diplomatic side as well as the security side, as well as the economic side. And there's a young man that I've been working with here in the US who is just consumed by the importance of solar. And I'm wondering two things. One is, are there any special programs that try to link young people who are interested in this? We have YALI, the Young African Leaders Initiative, and others. And so if there are any programs that think about that. And then two, programs that focus on women specifically. You mentioned that before, but solar does all sustainable development as well as the economic target and contributes to peace. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, and congratulations. You all know you have a legend in this space coming to be amongst you all to even say help explore the next set of great minds and next ambassadors. You're right, Dean, and that's going to be walking the halls. Hopefully, some of you at Exim Bank. Many we have recruited from Exim Bank, undergrads and graduates. And when I was at GMF, I was at the German Marshall Fund, as she said, and I recruited DW graduates, and Tara Sonnenschein, who was the Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy, worked very closely. She was here, she's now at Tufts institution, but she brought me here to work with your young professionals. I think in the US government, the initiatives that President Biden and Vice President Harris has announced that they're doing around youth entrepreneurship, around women, Vice President Tripp was really a lot focused on women. I think those are going to be some areas that we're going to see continue to grow and expand. As you talk about solar, we are moving very aggressively at XM in the solar space. We have of the authorization that we do have a goal that Congress has set, which is 5% of our authorization was to be focused on the renewable energy space. Solar, of course, is important in the space for us. So all things energy storage, energy efficiency, batteries, you name it, are areas that are prioritized, not to the disadvantage of anyone or to any sector, but those areas that can have some different financing flexibilities that we have we can offer. If you have some projects, we'd love to entertain and have them please come see us. They send them to XM Bank. I tell people, do not think about the old XM. We got to be talking about moving forward, not about moving back, and trying to make sure that we are the agency of yes and not the agency of no. And so that means that if we've got additional financing flexibilities and we have all these partners in the United States government, how are all of us working together to deliver on the commitment and the promise that the president has made for members on the continent? We will be remiss if we don't get it done in this administration with someone as supportive as the president and vice president. For those who are looking at projects that are maybe in markets or sectors that could be deemed a little bit risky, on our website at xm.gov, we have a country risk schedule that definitely tells you whether you're open in a market, whether we're open in a particular country. I gotta just punch it in. It's very easy to use. I go to it myself all the time because it's just too many countries to remember. But also it tells you whether we're open in short, medium, and long term. It tells you whether we're open in the private sector and the public sector. So for those who are looking to see, are we open in a particular market? Also, not only look at the yes and the no's and the check marks, but also the notes that also comes with that country schedule that has to actually go to the board before it's actually changed. But we really are looking for renewable projects. We also just hired a new senior advisor for climate. And so it just tells you we hired a senior advisor for Africa. And we hired folks who are definitely focused on these particular areas like we have never had at XM in the past. My medium term and long term finance, project finance, and structured finance division itself is over 100 people. So we have about 200 of the 400 people just primarily focused on short, medium, and long. And then we have a strong team that's focused on our transformational export area. And then we're very fortunate that this year we also drilled down and have created a global business development unit that is to assist and help both sides, large, medium, and small, do the work that we need to do to be aggressive and also to meet our goals. We have to meet goals at the XM Bank. They didn't just give us the money; they need us to meet our goals. And last year we were positive that we did. And on the renewable side, we had a goal and we met it. And this year they want to do more. And we are hoping very shortly to announce that we are on track to meet that goal and to exceed it, especially around the renewable space. And as you can imagine, solar and all these things play very important factor in that. When you look at the continent, you have to understand the need is great. The need is great around electricity. The need is great around things that so many of us take for granted. But one of the things that we know is that our American companies are some of the best companies in the world. And the products and services that they sell are the best in the world. And so we want to make sure that we are there engaging with as many folks who want to come to XM, whether it's the government, whether it's the exporter, whether it's the foreign buyer, to let them know that XM is back, open for business, and really need you to, they say, send all your projects over there. We're in the competition game, and we intend to win.
Questions? Okay, we play in the back there. Raise your hand high. Yeah, great.
Hi, it's very loud.
I will take
My name is Hannah Brown, and I actually graduated from the Elliott School a year ago now, which is quite surreal. And David was my father, Mark Brown's late best friend. And I'm actually now working at US Pharmacopoeia on a USAID funded project called Promoting the Quality of Medicines Plus. And we work on expanding access to quality assured medicines in low middle income countries. And I namely work on a sub project called the Global Vaccines Initiative in collaboration with the WHO. And actually, we just recently partnered with CCA. So it's a very full circle moment for me. And yeah, so just to give you some background, but basically I recently planned a vaccine study tour based in Cape Town back in December, where we hosted local medicine regulatory authorities from Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Senegal, and Rwanda. And we're basically seeking to strengthen and expand the capacity for the continent to manufacture its own vaccines by 2040. And there are currently, what a lot of people don't know, what I didn't know before working on this project, is that there are currently only 2 ISO accredited vaccine manufacturers, which is the highest level of WHO accreditation you can reach on the entire continent. And those are both located in Cape Town, which is why we brought all of the MRAs there to learn from the local manufacturers. And I guess my question for you, Chair Lewis, is what kind of work EXIM is doing in that space? How many authorizations are you providing? I know that the vaccine manufacturing space specifically, and where I'm coming from, is more like government heavy, regulatory heavy, and I'm not sure how much you are actually engaging with small businesses on this matter. I know that we engage a lot of local folks just because, we're working to get all of the different lab supplies and everything that is needed in order to, manufacture safe medicines. So just curious to hear if there's any active projects in the works, or if you've heard of any more engagements on providing authorizations to small businesses, large, and working diplomatically to ensure that more, money is being poured into this very dire need to expand vaccine access, most importantly, quality assured vaccine access on the continent, and that it's being manufactured locally.
So one thing that's actually interesting, and I always have to emphasize that XM, our prime mission is to facilitate exports. So if an American company is exporting in any of those places where you are, they can possibly come to us and talk to us about the financing. If a foreign buyer in those countries or the sovereign is looking to purchase goods and services from the United States, that's the other way that we support our exporters. I think there's also been a misnomer years ago. We don't do any work on the import side. We're all about the exporter. In terms of understanding about what's happening with the suppliers, what I can tell you is that from a manufacturing perspective, if any of them are interested in working with our manufacturers here in the United States for products or services, or any of our manufacturing companies who are exporting, we actually last year approved a new financing flexibility way of engaging our domestic manufacturers. It actually came out of the work that President Biden asked all of us to do around the supply chain. We all know that this is a critical area, healthcare, critical area, healthcare, health services. It's all a part of PGI. So it's something XM hasn't been totally focused on, but we're really looking at the healthcare area a little bit more, drilling down a lot more. On the manufacturing side, we have a program called now MMIA, Make More in America. We all know that we need to make more in America, but we also know we got to export more from America. And so that line in and of itself is one which we believe that we offered up to the administration, one of the only domestic manufacturing financing facility that any United States government has offered in that's even in existence. And that program comes with certain flexibilities that a manufacturer here in the United States or a foreign buyer who wants to come here looking to expand or to grow can look at XM now on the domestic manufacturing side. But what that also comes with is it has to be there has to be an export nexus, and there also has to be a significant jobs plan that is attached to it. Not today, but it has to be for the life of the project. They got to be exported. So, that's one of the reasons why we were up talking with labor, with the Steelworkers Union in particular, when we were in Pittsburgh, because we've got a lot of small and medium-sized manufacturers who are in that competition zone, and they want to manufacture a whole host of things. So it's not just for US Steel, it's for any manufacturer here in the United States as long as they're exporting. We would love to talk to any of them and be able to drill down, so how the financing flexibilities that we could give for those who might want to be manufacturing, growing and expanding here in the US, who are either currently exporting or who are looking to export. So would love to get any names that you have that may need our help and need our service.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're getting close to time. I'm gonna take a couple of times, okay, so I'll keep track of it. Did you have? Yes, you, gentlemen, sitting.
Oh, yeah, that's already, yeah.
So my name is Will Tuggle. I'm a first year student in the Elliott School at GW. I'm also here on behalf of the Delta Phi Epsilon Foreign Service Fraternity and the Onera Institute, both of whom are co-sponsors for today's event. We're very happy to have collaborated with this event. We look forward to doing that more in the future. And so my question for you was, which countries in Africa can you see developing the most over the next few years? Because I'm interested in really paying attention to ongoing development in Africa. As Ms. Cooke mentioned earlier, development has increased exponentially over the last 10 and 15 years. So I'm just really interested in seeing which countries you can see developing their economies more over the next few years. Thank you.
Great. Your name again?
Will Tuggle.
Lady over here.
Thank you. Hi there, my name is Nancy Onyango. I'm from Africa, but I'm working at the International Monetary Fund here in DC. You kind of answered the question I had, because thank you very much for those interesting, snippets that you gave us. I think it is very good what Exim Bank is trying to do on the ground, but you talked a lot about exports. I didn't hear so much on the import side, although you've just said that isn't necessarily the focus. However, you also did say, and I think the person who introduced the lecture talked about David Miller's vision and his dream about Africa realizing its potential. It's difficult to see Africa realizing its potential without something more of an equitable balance of trade. So the focus being very much on exports from the US into Africa, it would be good to hear about imports from Africa into the US. And then finally, just in terms of, I think you, Vivian talked about solar. When you're thinking about imports into Africa of products like solar, you've got to think about the green implications, which it sounds great, but over a period of time, when those items become obsolete, that is creating a problem for Africa in terms of what to do with the equipment when it's no longer of value for generating the solar. Thank you very much.
So much. And then in the way back.
Thank you, Chair Lewis, for being here. Assistant Dean Lakeisha Harrison here in Elliott School. Two questions. You mentioned the fact that XM needs to move into the future. So a question about what projects XM is considering or engaged in regarding African youth and young leaders in building up capacity or interest in importing to the African continent US goods for sale or for use in production of other materials locally on the ground. The second question is the potential impact of the African Continental Free Trade Area and how that may or may not impact Export-Import Bank relations with the continent in the future.
Okay, we're going to take one more in this round. I've prepared something.
The last one.
Okay, the last one, yes.
Behind you.
Behind
you.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you for this great conversation. My name is Kafuti Talaumbo. I am originally from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. My question is around capacity building. I'm pretty sure you can confirm from your experience traveling across Africa, many of the African companies there do not have the appropriate operation or accounting system to be able to partner with many of the companies here in the US. As we're moving forward, are you thinking about building a capacity program, perhaps with GW or any of the university here, to help those companies to build operating system, enabled to tap into the funding here and partner with American companies.
Great.
Okay.
Okay, excellent
Let's
question.
let's see what we
Okay,
can
we got Will kind of where.
Yeah, oh, I wrote them down.
Okay, I'll do that.
I'm gonna say, I'm looking for your business. A couple of things, and then if I miss it, you let me know. On the sustainability side and talking about equipment or anything that might be obsolete, I can tell you one thing for sure. Is that when we deal with our American businesses and companies, and we expect, and they have a high degree of value about the service and the products that they provide, and they work. And they're not stepping away when they move into countries whereby things that they may have purchased in the past, they don't work. And so our American businesses are very clear on the fact that in these renewables areas and energy, we have to be talking about sustainability. And with that sustainability, we have our own Secretary Carey that keeps us all focused about everything it is that we're doing and everything it is that we're providing, and what the US government is doing and what the US government is supporting. And so we are really on the import side, we don't fund any import. So that's a misnomer, but we still got the name Export Import Fund. That seems to hold, and it's all on the export side, all on the export side.
There are other, US Commerce Department.
Yeah, but they don't export.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, the bottom line is what Director Cooke is saying is that we have to work across the board with all government agencies who's providing some form of service that is needed or required. And so that's why we can go to those who have the implementing agreements of all things US. A lot of times people think, we don't do equity, we don't do aid. We literally we're here strictly on commercial financing at the Export Bank. I leave all of that diplomacy to others who are experts at it, and that's what they do. And we're delighted to always be working with our USG friends and colleagues across the board in that work. When she talked about the future is youth, how we support is working with state and others around entrepreneurship. And this year, we're going to be shortly announcing a project, a diaspora project in New York around the UN. That we hope to go straight to the work that we're trying to do to interest the diaspora community, and a lot of them we know are young people who are more interested in understanding how can an XM Bank be supportive for them if they're trying to grow their business, whether it's small or whether it's something larger that they may have. When it comes to capacity building, that is not our agency. That is an agency of others in US government. And not only US government, but also private sector, nonprofits, which we have definitely been engaged in. We know that capacity building needs to happen at the state, at the country level. We know capacity needs to happen with the private sector. It needs to happen private sector companies in countries that may not have everything that our companies have. So that's one of the reasons why developing a diaspora effort here in the US. We know that we believe it will yield some great results. We're working very closely with the special rep, Dr. McCullough over at the State Department, who has done all the public-private partnership work around youth, working with the Assistant Secretary over there for Cultural Affairs, and then just so many others. There is a great need. And what we do is we're staying very focused on the entrepreneurship side, on the entrepreneurs who need the finance. It's different than focusing on entrepreneurship. We're focusing on those that need our service. As it relates to the Continental Free Trade mandate that has just come down, we met with the director. Actually, I led a panel during the President's Summit of the African Leaders last year, of which he participated along with Ambassador Tai. And we are very excited about the work that we're doing. And that's one of the reasons when I traveled to Africa last year, we signed 3 agreements with, one with Afro-Asian Bank, Africa 50, and also with Africa Finance Development Corporation. We think that those are agreements that we've done with them who are on the continent, can be the work that we can collaborate together around co-financing and sharing of the risk and other things, but they're the same as the ones that they're similar in terms of focus as to the ones that we have signed with other countries. I was just before walking in here talking with some other ECAs that are looking on the work on the continent and actually are looking at the US. I'm glad to see the work that we're doing. And so we hope to continue to play a role to showcase that we are doing deals on the continent. We've done, I said, since 1942, we're going to continue to do them now in this era. And so when I talk about the future of XM, we have to be the bank. I keep emphasizing we have to be the bank for everybody. We have to be the bank for everyone. Can't be the bank for a few. And that's one of the reasons why even with our large companies, we are constantly talking to them about their supply chain. We're constantly talking to them about their small and medium sized vendors that work with them. We want to work with them because they're already right there. And a lot of them are doing the work and may not even know anything about an XM bank. So we know we have our work cut out for us and we're up for it. And then also, when you talk about commercial and development, so XM definitely is not a development agency. We work very closely with DFC, the old OPIC. We work very closely with USAID and just a whole host of the alphabet soup here in the US government in order to deliver the services. But rest assured that our focus is embedded in this title that we're here today, the commercial engagement with Africa, and really trying to make people understand not only what it is that we do, but that our openness and our inclusion and our ability to, and our desire. And that's why coming to meet with all of you who support David and his family and his children and his wife and his mother, who was with him every step of the way. Knowing that we have to have leaders like that and to constantly talk with Americans that Africa is now, not the future, it is now. And that American companies, we want them to be in their bid. We want them to be in their winning. And that's why XM being in the market sends a signal. Those MOUs that we sign, all of these companies tell us it's sending a signal that America is here, not going to be here, but we're here. And so I think this year we hope to see so many new results that we have been cultivating and to use this, I mean, as I say, come test us, man, make us use these flexibilities that we have. But, you know, when I look around the room and I see all of you, it does heart good, knowing that the work that we're doing is one that is going to yield results. Knowing full well that when I see Mrs. Miller and you all talk about his mother and you talk about his children that are here, understanding the role that the private sector has to play in this. It's the same thing about what the role the private sector is going to have to play when the time is right about rebuilding Ukraine. XM's history was born out of the Marshall Plan. Most people don't know that. We were the implementers of the Marshall. And so people are coming to us now because they want to talk about and get prepared and ready, because you know you can't happen when the war is over. It's got to be ready now. And we're working with the private sector closely on when that moment comes. But it's not just Ukraine. It is Africa, and it is Africa now. And the private sector is going to play a role, bar none, because we cannot do it by the government alone. We don't have enough money. You know, it's not enough of us. It's gonna take a yeoman's effort. We are open, I believe, in 44 of the 49 countries that we're currently scheduled to do, authorized to do business in. And from that openness, it tells you we got a lot of room to grow. We got a lot of room to grow in Africa, we got a lot of room to grow in the Caribbean, who's also working together in that frame. So we are participating in as many private sector events as we possibly can, and participating with members that like yourselves in this room. We need you. And we look forward to seeing all of you become ambassadors for the Exim Bank. And I brought where's my press secretary? She's here. My senior vice president for external. She's the press secretary back there. We have our confidential assistant. Please make sure you share those names. If you got some deals, please bring them to us at the Exim Bank. Looking forward to doing business with each and every one of you. Everybody's business is confidential. Everybody's business is confidential. But we can co-brand things with your organizations. If you want to learn more about Exim Bank, we're on the campuses talking to I hear a great need about youth advancement, and that's why it's really good to see what the administration is doing to help the young people be the future, who can help drive in their company or in their organizations that it's all right to do business in Africa. There's some people out there where help is on the way, and so we hope that Sim can be one of those. And we're just so proud to be at this juncture in this era with this president, with this vice president, who firmly believes that all of us in the US government and the private sector and the public sector can make a difference in the life of the continent.
Wonderful. We have a reception afterwards. I encourage you to come up to Chair Lewis, get those deals done quick.